The sun was rising slowly, painting the sky with soft orange light as the human guided the grandmother and the little girl out of the factory district. The air outside felt cleaner, fresher, almost like the world was trying to breathe again after the long night of fear. The grandmother leaned heavily on the human's arm. Her legs were weak, but her spirit felt lighter. The girl walked between them, still holding her necklace tightly. Its faint glow reflected in her wide eyes. They moved carefully through the ruins, avoiding open streets. The human checked every corner before stepping forward. The raiders were trapped under the fallen beam, but he knew they weren't the only threat in the region. More raiders. More hungry men. More danger. They couldn't stay here. We need to head to the river, the human whispered. There might be other survivors. Maybe food, maybe shelter. The grandmother nodded. Wherever you take us. We trust you. The girl squeezed his hand gently. You saved us so many times. I believe you. The human gave a small smile. I only kept my promise. They walked for hours, moving through broken markets, fallen towers, and burnt fields. Everywhere they looked, the marks of old storms were clear deep cracks in the earth. Empty water tanks, shattered farming machines. Life had left this place long ago. But then, something changed as they neared the river valley. The wind carried the smell of water. Birds circled above. The faint sound of flowing river reached them. It felt unreal, like they had stepped into another world. The girl gasped and ran ahead. Human, water, real water. The human and grandmother followed. The river wasn't large, but it was clean and bright under the sunlight. Green plants grew along its sides, rare, soft, and full of life. The grandmother knelt beside the water, letting it flow over her hands. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I thought I would never see fresh water again. The human let them drink first. He kept watch, scanning the horizon for danger. His body ached from the fights, and dust clung to every part of him. But he felt hope for the first time. The girl sat beside him and dipped her feet in the water. Human, are we safe now? He paused. Not completely, but safer than before. The girl looked up at him. Why did you help us? You didn't know us. He looked at the flowing river. Maybe because someone helped me once. When I had nothing. Maybe because I couldn't watch you suffer. Maybe because you both deserve a chance. She rested her head against his arm. You feel like family. The human blinked slowly. Family. Yes, the girl whispered. A new one. The grandmother slowly approached them, her steps steadier now after drinking water. She placed her wrinkled hand on the human's shoulder. You may not know our ways, our language, our world, she said softly. But you gave us something no one else gave. What? He asked gently. Hope. The human lowered his head. He wasn't used to such words. He wasn't used to being needed. But hearing them, something stirred inside him. Before he could speak, a faint sound came from the other side of the river, soft voices. Footsteps. Someone crying. The human tensed. Stay behind me. He walked toward the sound, crouching low. Through the tall grass, he saw them for alien survivors, thin and scared, 2 adults and 2 children. When they spotted him, they panicked. No. Please, don't hurt us. We have nothing left. The human raised both hands. I'm not here to hurt you. The grandmother stepped beside him and called out, He saved us. He will help you too. The survivors looked shocked. One adult stepped forward. You helped her. You're a human. Why? The girl ran up and held her necklace. Because he cares. And because raiders won't stop unless we stand together. The survivors looked at each other, then slowly approached. They were weak, lost, and desperate. The humans saw their fear and made a decision. We can find shelter together, he said. We can protect each other. We can survive as a group. If you want, you can come with us. The survivors nodded with tears in their eyes. For the first time, the human realized something important. He wasn't just saving 2 lives anymore. He was saving many. The grandmother placed her forehead gently against his arm. You are more than a traveler. You are the beginning of something new. He looked at the people gathering around them. At the river, at the faint glow of the girl's necklace, a new purpose was forming quiet, powerful, real. We'll build something better, the human said softly. Together, the little girl smiled and held his hand tightly, and with that single moment of unity, after so much fear and suffering, a new beginning truly started. The factory tunnels grew darker as the human led them deeper inside. The walls were covered with rust, and old machines stood like frozen giants. The air was cold, heavy, and strangely quiet, almost too quiet. But for now, they were safe. The raiders' shouts had faded behind them. The human helped the grandmother sit on a stack of old cloth sacks. The little girl stayed close, holding her hand tightly. Both were shaking, one from age and weakness, the other from fear. The human knelt beside them. You need to rest. We can't move fast with you both so tired. The grandmother nodded slowly, her breathing uneven. Thank you, human. You saved us again. He shook his head. It's not over yet. They will keep searching. The girl pressed her head against her grandmother's shoulder. Nana, why do they want us? Why won't they stop? The grandmother didn't answer. She looked away, her eyes suddenly filled with something deeper than fears, something like guilt. The human noticed. There's something you haven't told me. The grandmother didn't speak. Her hands trembled as she tried to hide the truth. But the human's voice was gentle. You can trust me. The girl looked up at her grandmother too. Nana, please tell him. The grandmother closed her eyes for a long moment, then opened them slowly. Her voice was soft, almost breaking. The raiders. They are not chasing us only because we are weak. The human frowned. Then why? The grandmother touched the girl's hair with shaking fingers. Because she is not just any child. The girl blinked. Nana, what are you saying? The grandmother took a deep breath. Your parents, before they were taken, they protected something important. Something powerful. Something the raiders want. The human leaned closer. What kind of something? The grandmother hesitated again, as if speaking the words might bring danger instantly. But there was no hiding now. She carries it, the grandmother whispered. Inside her, the human froze. Inside her. What do you mean? The grandmother wiped a tear. My son, her father, was a scientist. Before the storms, before the raids. He discovered something, a small core of energy, something that could light a whole town, even save our world from hunger. The human's eyes widened. A power source. Yes, she whispered, but unstable. Dangerous if used wrong. Others wanted it. My son hid it. Inside a small life support capsule. And he gave it to her to keep it safe. The girl stared at her grandmother with shock. Me, Nana. I don't understand. The grandmother hugged her tightly. It's not inside your body, little one. It is hidden inside your necklace. The human looked down. The girl wore a small pendant. He had seen it before, but thought it was just old jewelry. It glowed faintly, like a heartbeat. It's a microcore, the grandmother said. Very small, but very powerful. If the raiders get it, they can control every town left. They can starve everyone. They can destroy whatever remains of our world. The human exhaled slowly. Now it all made sense. The raiders weren't chasing just a child. They were chasing a weapon, a future, a chance for power. They found out your son hid it. The human asked, the grandmother nodded. Only after he was taken. They searched his home. They searched me. But they never imagined a child would carry it. The girl stared at her necklace, fear rising inside her. Nana, will it hurt me? No, sweet one, the grandmother whispered. It only protects, but the raiders will tear the world apart to find it. The human placed a gentle hand on the child's shoulder. You're safe with me. I gave you a promise. The grandmother looked at him with tired but grateful eyes. I feared telling you. I feared you would leave, or try to take it. The human shook his head firmly. I protect people, not things, not power. The grandmother's lips trembled. Then you are different, truly different. Before the human could reply, he heard something very faint scratching, dragging, a metal clank. He stood up instantly. What is it? The girl whispered. The human lowered his voice. The raiders, they've entered the factory. The grandmother gasped softly. Already. The human nodded. They are searching slowly. They don't want to lose the girl, or the core. The grandmother clutched the girl tightly. Human, please, save her. If I am too slow, leave me. He shook his head. No one gets left behind. The sound grew louder, footsteps spreading through different halls. The grandmother whispered, they will destroy everything for that core. The human gripped a metal bar tightly, eyes fierce. Then we make sure they never get it. He looked at the girl. We're going to fight back. And for the first time, the girl didn't look afraid. She looked ready. The human held the metal bar tightly as the sound of raider footsteps echoed through the factory halls. The little girl pressed herself against her grandmother, clutching the glowing necklace that now felt heavier than ever. The grandmother's breathing grew quick. But she forced herself to stay calm. The human moved to the edge of the corridor and peeked out. 3 raiders entered the main hall, the same 3 who chased them before, now dirtier, angrier, and moving with purpose. They're close, the human whispered. Stay behind the crates. Don't move until I say. He looked at the grandmother. Her face was pale, but her eyes were sharp. Human. You don't have to fight them. He shook his head. I'm not fighting for me. I'm fighting for you. The grandmother swallowed hard and nodded. The raiders spread out, searching each corner of the hall with slow steps. They were careful, eyes scanning the shadows. They knew the human was dangerous now. They knew he had already outsmarted them once. The leader growled, "Find the child. She has the core." The girl flinched, gripping her necklace. The human placed a calm hand on her shoulder. Don't worry. They won't reach you. He took a quiet step into the shadow between 2 machines. The raider's footsteps grew louder. He waited. 1 raider passed by. 2 raiders turned toward the upper ramp. The 3rd, smaller, faster, walked straight toward the crates where the girl and grandmother were hiding. The human's heartbeat slowed. Time felt thick. The girl gasped softly. The raider smiled. Found Yo, the human struck. He stepped out from the shadows and swung the metal bar in one powerful arc. The strike hit the raider's wrist, knocking the weapon away. The raider shouted and turned toward him, but the human didn't give him a chance. A second blow hit the raider's shoulder. The raider stumbled back, crashing into a barrel. Over here. One of the other raiders yelled. Footsteps thundered. The human grabbed the downed raider's collar and shoved him toward the machines. Move, he shouted to the grandmother and the girl. They ran. The girl held the grandmother's hand tightly as they sprinted across the hall. Dust flicked up from their feet, and broken metal parts clattered under them. The second raider swung at the human with a knife. The human dodged narrowly. The blade scraped the floor with a metallic scream. He blocked the next swing with the metal bar, sparks flying. The raider pushed harder, but the human held firm, muscles shaking. Then the raider leaned close and hissed, "You can't save them." The human gritted his teeth. "Watch me." He shoved his shoulder into the raider's chest, knocking him backward, then kicked his knee. The raider fell with a howl. The leader raider rushed forward, grabbing a heavy iron hook from the floor. He swung it with deadly force. The human ducked. The hook smashed into a machine, sending metal pieces flying. "Leave the child." The leader roared. The human stepped back, breathing hard. The two injured raiders were struggling to stand. The leader re-gripped the hook and moved faster. The girl screamed, "Human." He saw her standing near the grandmother, both trapped near the wall. The grandmother leaned on a pipe, too weak to run farther. The leader swung the hook again. The human blocked it with a metal bar, but the force was brutal. The bar bent slightly. His arm shook. The next blow might break it. He needed to end this. He glanced around desperately. Then he saw it, a large hanging chain attached to an old industrial crane above the raiders. If he could pull it loose, it might fall on them. It might stop the chase, but he had only seconds. The leader charged again. The human dodged to the left. The hook slammed into the ground. Dust exploded upward. The human ran toward the chain. The raiders followed, shouting curses. The human grabbed the chain and pulled hard. It didn't move. He pulled again, muscles burning, teeth clenched. The chain groaned. The leader realized the danger. Stop him, now. But it was too late. With one last pull, the chain snapped loose. The massive metal beam above the raiders cracked, shook, and then boom. It collapsed onto the factory floor, sending dust and shards flying like a storm. The raiders were thrown aside, pinned under debris, trapped. Silence followed. Then the little girl cried, "Human." The human pushed through the dust cloud and limped toward them. The girl ran to him and hugged him tightly. He smiled weakly and put a hand on her head. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're safe." The grandmother reached out with trembling hands. Her eyes glistened with tears. You saved us again, even when we gave you nothing." The human shook his head gently. "You gave me something. You gave me a reason." But then his smile faded. The raiders were trapped but not dead, and where there were 3 raiders, more would come. He looked toward the distant exit of the factory. "We must leave now, before backup arrives." The girl nodded. The grandmother held her necklace tightly. Their fight wasn't over, but together they had a chance. The narrow alley was dark and tight, the walls leaning toward each other like they wanted to crush anyone passing through. The human guided the grandmother and the little girl carefully, his hands steady on their backs. Behind them, the angry voices of the raiders echoed through the streets. "Find them. They can't go far. The girl is ours." The grandmother's breathing was sharp and fast, and the girl held on to her tightly, afraid she might fall. The human slowed his steps and checked the path ahead. The alley led to a broken courtyard, quiet for now, but exposed. "We need to move fast," he whispered. The grandmother tried to speak, but coughed weakly instead. The girl rubbed her back, whispering, "Nana, breathe, breathe, breathe." The human kneeled beside them. "Are you hurt?" The grandmother shook her head. "Just tired. Hungry, old." She forced a small smile. "I am slowing you down." The human shook his head firmly. "You're not slowing me. We stay together." The little girl looked at him with wide eyes, surprised. No one had said those words to them in a long time. You don't have to help us," the grandmother whispered. "You are a traveler. You can leave. No one will blame you." The human sighed softly. I know I can leave, but I won't. Why? The girl asked quietly, curiosity and fear mixing in her voice. He looked at her gently. Because you deserve safety. Because no child should be hunted. And because I made a choice. A choice. The grandmother repeated. He nodded. I promised myself that if I saw suffering, I wouldn't turn away. Not again. His voice held something heavy, something from his past, but he didn't explain. He simply stood and looked around the courtyard. There were broken carts, a cracked fountain, and old stone steps leading to a fallen rooftop. Not much protection. He needed a plan. We rest here for a moment, he said. But we can't stay long. The girl sat on a stone block, her legs shaking from running. The grandmother sat beside her and wrapped an arm around her shoulders. The human checked the rooftops and corners. Every shadow felt dangerous. He listened for footsteps. Nothing yet. But he knew they were searching. Those raiders, he said quietly. How long have they been here? The grandmother looked down. Months, maybe more. When the storms destroyed our farms and food vanished, people became desperate. The raiders took what was left. They took people too. The girl whispered, they took my parents. The human froze. The grandmother nodded sadly. Her parents tried to fight them. They were taken away. We never saw them again. The girl hugged her knees tightly. Her small voice trembled. Nana hid me. She always hid me. The human felt a deep anger inside his chest. It wasn't loud. It wasn't hot. It was cold and sharp, like a blade slowly forming in his heart. No, child should live this way. He knelt in front of the girl and looked into her eyes. Listen to me. I will not let them take you. I promise. Her eyes widened. You promise? Yes, he said. I will protect you. Both of you. The grandmother touched his shoulder. Her hand was weak but full of gratitude. Thank you. But please, do not risk your life for us. He shook his head. You don't understand. I'm not risking my life. I'm choosing to save yours. Before the grandmother could speak, the human lifted his head. He heard something, footsteps, far away, but getting closer. He stood up quickly and scanned the rooftops again. Dust trembled slightly with each step approaching. They were searching the houses one by one. They were organized, determined. They're sweeping the town, the human whispered. We need to move before they reach this side. He helped the grandmother stand. Her legs shook, but she managed to stay upright. The girl held both of their hands. Where will we go? The girl asked. The human pointed toward the outer district. There are old factories near the river. Maybe we can hide there. Maybe find tools, supplies, and if the raiders follow. The grandmother asked. The human looked at her with calm, steady eyes. Then I will make sure they don't touch you. His voice held no fear. The grandmother believed him. The girl believed him, and for the first time in days, they felt a small spark of hope. They stepped out of the courtyard quietly, moving like shadows between ruins. The human walked in front, the girl in the middle. The grandmother behind. The wind blew dust across the street again, but this time, it felt less like a warning and more like a promise of change as they left the ruined homes behind. The human whispered to himself, almost like a vow, I won't fail them. And with that, their journey into deeper danger and deeper trust began. The human guided the grandmother and the little girl toward the old factory district, where tall metal buildings leaned like tired giants. Rust covered every door, and broken glass covered the ground like frozen tears. The air smelled of old oil and dust. It was a place where no normal traveler would go to, dark, too silent, too dangerous, perfect for hiding. But the raiders were getting closer. Their angry voices echoed faintly behind the group, mixed with their heavy footsteps. The human kept glancing back. every muscle tight with alertness. "Faster," he whispered softly. "They're spreading out." The girl held his hand tightly as they moved. Her steps were small but quick, her eyes wide with fear. The grandmother tried her best to keep up, but every few meters she had to pause and breathe. The human supported her gently, without slowing too much. Finally, they reached a narrow, metal gate barely hanging by one hinge. The human pushed it aside with his shoulder, and the three slipped inside a long hallway made of cracked concrete. Inside, the sound changed. No more footsteps. No more wind. Just silence. A bad silence. The human scanned the hallway broken pipes, old tools, piles of dust, and a large open loading area ahead. Perfect place for raiders to ambush. "We need to cross fast," he whispered. But before they could move, the girl tugged his sleeve. "Human, someone is here." He froze. She was right. From the upper metal walkway came a soft, shifting sound, foot sliding on dust. Then another. Then a faint click, like someone checking a weapon. The human gently pushed the grandmother and girl toward a pile of crates. "Hide there," he whispered. "Do not move until I say." The grandmother grabbed his arm. "You cannot face them alone." He gave her a calm look. "I made a promise." He stepped away before she could argue. Slowly, he picked up a long metal rod lying on the ground. It was heavy, rusty, and not a real weapon, but it was better than fighting with his bare hands. He held it close and took silent steps toward the loading area. Then he saw them. 3 raiders. They were already inside. One stood near a broken machine, scanning the area slowly. Another crouched behind metal barrels. The third was climbing down the walkway toward the roofs. Main floor, they had tracked them perfectly. The raiders whispered among themselves. "They're here. I can smell their fear. Search the corners. The girl is ours." The human's heartbeat became steady, almost to calm. He couldn't let them find the grandmother or the girl. He needed to distract them, pull them away. He picked up a small stone and tossed it to the far right corner. Clink. Immediately, the raiders turned. "There!" one shouted. Rushing forward, 2 followed. The human slipped out from behind a pillar and sprinted toward the other direction. His footsteps echoed loudly on purpose. Instantly, one raider spotted him. "There?" The human. "Get him." The leader yelled. The chase began. Dust flew behind the human's boots as he dashed through the loading area. He jumped over broken crates, ducked under hanging wires, and slid behind a row of old machines. The raiders followed, furious. "He's trying to lead us away. Catch him." He's alone. He can't win. But the human wasn't trying to win a fight. He was buying time. Every second he stayed ahead meant another second the grandmother and child stayed safe. The human's breathing was heavy now, but his mind was sharp. He needed to confuse them. He needed a way out. As he turned a corner, his foot hit something, an old metal cart. It rattled loudly. The raiders were getting closer. Then he saw it. A staircase leading up to a half-broken balcony. A risky idea, but his only chance. He ran up the stairs, the metal shaking under his weight. The raiders followed, shouting and threatening. One tried to climb faster, pushing the others aside. The human reached the top. The balcony was unstable, the railings bent. Below him was a drop into a pile of old, soft crates. If he jumped, he might make it. If the raiders jumped after him, they might break something. He turned back. The first raider was almost on him. With one sudden move, the human swung the heavy metal rod at the railing brackets. The corroded bolts snapped, the balcony tilted violently. The raider screamed as the floor under him shifted. The human jumped. He fell onto the pile of crates, landing hard but safe. The balcony behind him collapsed loudly. sending the raider crashing down in a storm of dust and metal. The other raiders stopped in shock. The human didn't wait. He got up, limping slightly, and ran back the way he came. Back to the grandmother. Back to the child. Back to the promise. They were waiting exactly where he had told them to hide. When the girl saw him, she gasped. Human. He knelt, breathing heavily. We need to move. Now. Behind them, the raiders were still shouting, still searching. But the human had survived. He wasn't giving up. Not now. Not ever. He lifted the girl into his arms, supported the grandmother with his other hand, and led them deeper into the factory maze toward safety, toward hope, toward the next part of their dangerous journey. The human walked slowly through the silent alien town, his boots sinking into soft dust. The sky above him was gray, heavy, and still, as if the world had stopped breathing. Each house he passed was broken, burned, or empty. Doors hung loose, windows shattered, and old smoke stains marked the walls. He felt as if he was walking through the bones of a dead world. He had traveled far, searching for a place to rest, maybe find water, maybe find life. But the town looked abandoned. No voices, no footsteps, not even the sound of animals. Only the wind moved, carrying small pieces of paper and ash down the empty street. Still, he felt something. A feeling that someone was watching him from the shadows. He stopped near an old stone well and listened. At first, he heard nothing. Then, very softly, a whisper reached him weak, trembling, almost like the sound of a dying breath. Please. Someone. He turned quickly. At the end of the street, an old alien grandmother was slowly walking toward him. Her skin looked dry, her eyes sunken, her clothes torn. She was shaking with every step. Behind her, holding her dress tightly, was a tiny alien girl, thin, scared, and pale with hunger. The grandmother dropped to her knees before him. Her body was so weak that she almost fell face first into the dust. With great effort, she pushed the little girl forward, as if offering her, "Please, take her," the grandmother whispered. "I'm too old. She needs food. She needs life." The human stared in shock. He had seen hunger before, suffering before. But never something like this, someone willing to give away their own grandchild. Just so the child could survive. The girl shook her head and clung to the grandmother, tears falling silently from her large eyes. She did not speak, but her small hands trembled as they held her grandmother's arm. Her whole body was thin like a shadow, but she refused to let go. The human slowly knelt down in front of them. He tried to speak softly, hoping not to scare the child. "Hey." "It's okay," he said. "I'm not here to hurt you." The girl looked up at him, frightened but curious. Her eyes were a mix of fear and hope. The grandmother's voice cracked. "Please, you have food, don't you? Anything. A piece of bread. A fruit she hasn't eaten for days." The human opened his small travel bag. Inside, he had only a little food left. A half piece of bread. A small water bottle. His own supplies were low, but he could not look at the starving child and refuse. He broke the bread into 2 soft pieces and held one toward the girl. She hesitated at first. Then, slowly, she reached out with shaking hands and took it. She ate it painfully fast, as if afraid someone might take it away. The grandmother watched with tears in her eyes. "Thank you. Thank you, human." The human gave her the remaining half. She tried to refuse, pushing it back toward him. No, she needs more. But the human insisted. "You both need it. Eat." After taking a small sip of water, the grandmother finally accepted the bread. Her hands were trembling as she ate, showing how long she had been starving. The human looked around again. The silence felt heavier now. Too heavy. Where is everyone? He asked. The grandmother looked at the ground. Gone, taken, hiding, dead. I don't know. Raiders came. They took the strong ones. They took food. They took everything. The human felt a cold feeling rise in his chest. Raiders. That explained the emptiness. That explained the fear in the girl's eyes. And you too? He asked softly. We hid, the grandmother whispered. But they return. They always return. We can't run far. I am too old. She is too small. The girl suddenly gripped the human's sleeve and pointed behind him toward the alley. The human turned quickly. Shadows moved between broken walls. Slow, careful, silent, not friendly. The grandmother's voice trembled. They followed us. The human stood up slowly, placing himself between the grandmother, the girl, and the moving shadows. His body tensed, eyes sharp. The starving streets were no longer silent. Danger had found them, and the human knew. He couldn't walk away now. The human stepped forward carefully, placing one foot in front of the other, his body forming a wall between the two aliens and the shadows ahead. The street was still empty, but something was moving just beyond the broken houses, slow, quiet, confident. Whoever it was did not fear being seen. The grandmother pulled the child close and whispered, "Do not look. Do not make noise." But the child was already trembling, staring at the moving darkness with big, frightened eyes. She knew exactly who was out there. The human tightened his grip on the small metal pipe he carried for protection. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. He scanned the street again. Nothing clear. Just shadows. And the feeling of being watched. Who are they? He asked softly. The grandmother swallowed hard. Raiders. They hunt the weak. They take children. For work, for trading. Sometimes worse. Her voice cracked. They tried to take her before. I fought them. But I am old. The child whispered, "They want me." That single sentence carried so much fear that the human felt anger rise inside him. He looked down at the girl so tiny, so thin she could barely stand. How could anyone want to hurt her? A sudden metallic sound echoed through the empty street. Clink. Clink, clink. Not loud, but clear enough. The human whispered, "They are signaling each other." The grandmother nodded slowly. "They are surrounding us." The human's eyes narrowed. The shadows were now splitting. One moved toward the left wall, another to the right, and a third figure stayed behind. Watching like a hunter choosing the perfect moment, he lowered his body and spoke gently to the girl. "Listen, I need you to stay behind your grandmother. Hold her tight. Don't run unless I tell you. Understand?" The girl nodded, but tears slipped down her cheeks silently. The human took a breath. He didn't have weapons. He didn't have armor. He didn't even have food. But he had something the raiders didn't expect, a reason to fight. Suddenly, a figure stepped from behind a wall. An alien man, tall, thin, with metal bands around his arms. His eyes were sharp and full of greed. He smiled slowly when he saw the child. "Well, well," the raider hissed. "Looks like the old one finally found a buyer." The grandmother shook her head wildly. "No, he is not quiet," the raider snapped. "You had your chance. We warned you before." Two more raiders stepped out from the opposite sides, blocking both exits. Their boots cracked the dry ground as they walked forward. The human raised his pipe slightly. But the raiders laughed. "You want to fight?" one asked. "You're alone, traveler." The human stayed calm. "You're wrong." They looked confused. The raider leader stepped forward. "What do you mean?" The human nodded toward the girl. "I'm not alone. I'm protecting them." The raiders laughed loudly now, their voices filling the empty street. "Protecting." The leader echoed, "We own this town. We take what we want." He pointed at the girl. "And we want her. The grandmother stumbled forward, trying to block the view. "Please, she is only a child. She works, she eats," the raider replied coldly. "That's how it goes." The human's grip on the pipe tightened. A deep anger burned in his chest, but he kept his mind clear. If he rushed, he could die in seconds. If he waited too long, they could grab the girl. He needed a plan. He looked around broken market stalls. Loose bricks, old metal rods, dusty carts. Anything could be used. The raiders were spreading out, thinking they had one. They didn't see what the human saw. A broken fuel canister lay near a crushed vehicle. A frayed wire sparkled in the sun. A pile of glass shards rested beside a shattered window. The human stepped back slowly, as if afraid. The raiders smirked, thinking he was giving up. But he wasn't retreating. He was positioning. The grandmother whispered desperately, "Run, human. Save yourself." But he shook his head. "No, you don't leave family behind." The raider leader spat. "They're not your family." The human stared straight into his eyes. "They are now." For the first time, the raiders hesitated. His voice wasn't loud. His stance wasn't threatening. But something in his eyes made them step back slightly. He wasn't bluffing. A sudden gust of wind blew dust between them. Blurring the view for a moment, the human moved first. With a swift motion, he kicked a loose board, sending a spray of glass shards across the ground. The raiders jumped back, momentarily blinded. "Run!" The human shouted. He grabbed the grandmother's arm and pulled her toward a narrow alley space, too tight for all raiders to follow at once. The girl held her grandmother. The human shielded both, and together they ran through the choking dust. Behind them, angry screams rose. The raiders were coming. But now, the human had something far stronger than fear. He had a mission.